Hey everybody, Texas Stroke Airlines, this performance shop, Lone Star Mopars.com. I was in the middle of a Summit tool haul, and I decided this might actually be worthwhile for a standalone video. And just because that way it'll be easier to find for people, you can kind of see it in person through video, if you will, and kind of decide if it's right for you. But what we have here is a performance tool rolling engine stand. As you can clearly see from the box, the part number from Summit Racing will be WMR-W41037. If you've got a preferred vendor or supplier and you're looking for this, just search for part number W41037. The WMR is Weimar. That's kind of the company behind Performance Tool, if you will. But this thing set me back all of $67.99. And what do I intend to do with it? I intend to put engines on it and move them. That's exactly what we're going to do. Now, a couple of selling points here. When I talk about engine stands in this case, if I speak that way, this is what I'm referencing is the Dolly, the Cradle, whatever people refer to them in different terms. Typically with an engine stand, you're gonna, think of like something that would be more, waist level, crank it over, rotate it, spin it 360, put your crank in, rotate the block, cram your pistons and all that good stuff. But in the event that I say stand, we're referring to this for all intents and purposes in this video. And there's a couple of different options when it comes to engine cradles, engine stands, engine dollies. A lot of them that you're going to find right off the bat would be from All-Star. They kind of have mixed reviews, as do most of these items. The biggest issue there, the price is a little higher than this to begin with, and then you have to spend roughly the same amounts to get their caster kit. If I were to do that, we spend about 140 bucks instead of 67, and then I'm in a situation where if I hate their casters, I still have to go out and buy new casters. With this option, if I hate these casters, which I very well might, okay, we're able to just bite the bullet. I can keep these and use them for a creeper seat or whatever. Nothing, throw them away, whatever you want to do, and we don't have the added expense past the initial purchase. There's Powerhouse Performance has apparently started making some stands for Chrysler stuff. I don't have any first-hand experience with those. Of course, the most popular is going to be All-Star. It's just sold at more places and it's been sold longer. The catch is, some people say it works great. Everyone else says it worked terrible, or they had to modify it, or they had to, tweak it in some way, shape, or form. If I had time right now to build my own engine stand, we wouldn't have this on the floor. All right, this is a little bit of a time crunch. That's why I'm out here at 10 o'clock after work, late night at work at that. Literally got home a little bit after 9, ate supper, and here I am. So this has a couple of selling points. Number one, it's going to be universal. Now, we use that with a grain of salt with anything Chrysler. But essentially the way this one works, where most of the stands are going to come in and they're going to have a provision in place to bolt to the motor mounts, sort of towards the front or middle of your block, and then at the back of the block, where your transmission would connect, that's sort of the default staple of the design. This one's a little bit different. It's actually using gravity and the oil pan rail. So if you've got like a fancy oil pan or there's a lot of reinforcing ribs that you care about, that might be an issue. If you're using this with like bare short blocks or something, there's absolutely nothing to worry about. But that is the design on this one. And then if you can see, kind of right where my fingers are, there's those little nuts coming up from the casters, and it almost looks like a different color of yellow, right? The framework itself is sort of a bright yellow, and then the legs right there are sort of like a funky mustard color, right? That is your adjustability. So I don't know that the square tubing moves front to back. We'll have to figure all this out, but I do know that those legs will spread apart, as most legs do, right? And that's going to allow us, A, to fit massive oil pans, and B, to adjust from, say, a small block to a big block, to a slant 6 to a Hemi, to late model 5.7 or 6.4, all the way back to a 440, 426, 383 type of a thing, right? That versatility is important. If I were to have come in and bought a stand from All-Star for, say, the 440, it's going to have slightly different bolt pattern than our 360 or 340 or 318 or 5.2, 5.9 Magnum, right? Those are all going to be standalone universal type of things. And with that said, this will work, or has the potential to work, across that entire lineup. Whereas we would need a stand for the small block and we'd need a stand for the big block. If this works, it's going to be beautiful. It's going to allow us, the biggest bang for our buck. In terms of going straight for the cream of the crop, that would be from US Car Tool. They sell stands for small and big block Mopars. They're $199 before they ship. So $200 plus freight. I would say virtually everyone's going to spend at least $25, depending where you're located, possibly more than that, maybe up to $50 to $60. So you got $250, somewhere in that ballpark, we're going to say, in the stand. And it's going to be really, really good, but it's only going to be for small block or big block. So if you wanted to do the pair, you're looking at $500. That's expensive. You can easily fabricate these. If you can fabricate, now that's the caveat there, you can make your own to your own standards with your own casters for fractions of that price. Problem is, most people can't, or it's a time issue, or it's just like, oh, that's easier than me getting the material, and I don't want to have another 16 foot of metal sitting around type of a thing. For me, this is all about time. If this turns out to suck, I can salvage it with my own casters. If it's serviceable right now, I don't really care. In fact, I might buy another one. I'm kind of in the midst of doing a lot of cleaning, and I need to get a lot of stuff moved really fast. So that's where we stand, but that's sort of the premise behind this one. It does come with straps because, again, this is relying on gravity. This is not going to be bolted in place at all. So those straps that they include, which again, most people may want to upgrade or will over time, I'm sure, they're actually important because just for the added security, you can go to town. Now, something else you could do with this, say that, you're in like a big shop, you have a forklift or whatever, you don't even have to mess with the casters. You can just set it on a pallet or a skid, whatever you want to do, and go to town, and that'll be way more sturdy and stable. As is, these are 3-inch heavy-duty swivel casters. Problem is, I don't believe they've got brakes on them, so if you just throw this in the back of your truck, hopefully it's a smooth road, but every time you start and stop or have to hit on the brakes, you have a risk of your engine, 3 to 600 pounds or so, rolling back and forth in the bed. Not a good situation, particularly if you're just picking it up fully assembled from a machine shop. So without further ado, I'm going to open this thing up. We'll take a look at the content, and then we will get it assembled, see what we think. Alright, since I am in a bit of a time crunch, this is probably what you're going to see right before you see the finished product, but I should mention we get the owner's manual. They claim this is good for $750. That's kind of pushing the max you'd want to go with, like a fully built 440 cast iron everything. Manifold and exhaust manifolds on there. You might be teetering right at the breaking point. Then again, if you have aluminum heads and other stuff like that, you could very well be within spec. But it is worth noting, they've kind of just got the frame. I know exactly how they build that. Very simple. They took angle iron, they slotted it, they heat it up, they bend it. They might have like a robot doing it, but like if you're old school, you'd heat it up, bend it, fold it. It looks like they've tacked it in the corners. But this is how it came packed, just with this on the top. And you can see the 2 straps that they included, which is a nice touch. There's the casters from this height. We haven't been down to inspect them, but from up here, they actually don't look terrible. But keep in mind, they are 3-inch. I'm not sure if they're rubber or plastic. We'll figure all that out. But it is yellow. The powder coating kind of off in that top corner. This is always a telltale sign, the little things. Like a lot of times, you could run a full bead in that corner just for best case scenario, the best strength, right? Or add a gusset type of thing. This is just folded. They did like a tack, seemingly offset from the middle towards the inboard side, or to each their own. But the powder coating, it just takes a little bit more time, to get your corners to cover really good. It is difficult, I get it, but like I said, this is the difference between paying $67 and maybe paying someone $150 for this. And keep in mind, when you see this, there's really not a lot to this. There's really not a lot to any of this stuff, and it's just a matter of, do you know how to fab it? Do you have the equipment to do it? And are you willing to take the time or have the time? But that's how she came packed. Nothing fancy, just some foam, and looks honestly kind of like paper towels from up here, which, hey, that could be useful in the current world we're living in. So I'm going to get this out, get it assembled, assuming we have everything we need, and we will take a look at the finished product. Alright, so something is amiss. The stand is gone, and that's because we've got it partially assembled. What you're going to need, I'd recommend a rubber mallet or soft-faced hammer in this case. That's what I had handy, so that's what we went with. Just to tap the cross frames down. 19 millimeter is going to be the wrench or socket size that you need for the casters, and then a 17 that's on the pad right there is what we're going to need for the uprights. Now you can kind of see it's not quite square. I'm hoping getting a load on it will help a little bit. I got the 440 kind of up in the air right here, and subsequently what they say you need to do is measure the length of the oil pan, and you want it to be within 2 inches of the extremes on either side and no shorter than 4. And so with small block and big block Chrysler, that basically equates to I need to be outboard all the way. And then the uprights, you can see I still have those loose. Again, this is literally square tubing in square tubing, but that's what we'll have the 17mm wrench or socket for. You can kind of break those down. They recommended you have them on the inside. Their picture showed them both facing away, so where I have this one on the inside, they would have this flipped, even though that doesn't match with what they said. But my logic was, with this having to be outboard all the way, in the event that we wanted to really like bear down on this with a socket, we cannot do that with the framework of the angle iron right there. So I elected to have them both face in, which is what we're going to do. That way, wrench, socket, whatever I want to use, we can make happen. Their directions to a T say, slide this into place, basically in the scenario we have here, figure out where these need to be positioned, and then tighten them down, and then lower it. So that's what we're going to attempt to do. Alright, so there we have it. The 440 is planted on the stand. It's a lot taller than I was thinking it would be, but I guess if we ever get like a super deep oil pan, we're covered. So this is all stock Virgin motor here, and it's going to allow me to slide this 440 out of the way, then obviously get the cherry picker out so we can send it over to the truck, lift that motor, and then since this did seem to work, it does seem to roll okay. Keep in mind, this is like worst case scenario. This is a decked out cast iron 440. Intake is in place, exhaust manifolds are in place. It's pretty well dressed out, as you can see here. This would be like as heavy as it gets. So what I'm probably going to do is I got to run back inside, shower, get ready for work tomorrow. But I feel like if it was going to collapse, it would have already done so. And on that note, I'll give it overnight. I'm going to kind of leave it chained. So if it does collapse, you know, it'll kind of have a limited swing range. Hopefully nothing too crazy happens. But it is set up. It is ready to go. This will allow me, like I said, to get the 440 out of here, or to the side, store it away, get the cherry picker to the truck, get the Magnum out, and probably order one of these again. So that's kind of the route we are heading, just to prove the point. Okay, if you're doubting me, you can see I've got a little bit of tension in the chain right there, and I'm going to go ahead and lower her down. I'd lowered it down already, and then I kind of picked the slack back up just to be safe when I went in and tightened all the uprights down with the 17mm. So I'll line this sucker up. The chain has dropped, so as you can see there, there's slack in the chain, the whole hook and about a quarter of the big link. Engine didn't lower. That's what we were looking for. That means the stand is functional, right? So with the slack in the chain, I'm going to leave it about like that, just in the event that this decides to spread or fail overnight. If it survives the night, I'm thinking we're going to be okay. So really wasn't much to that. Again, for the 440 here, it was the farthest outboard. Let me actually tilt you down so you can see what I'm talking about. You can kind of see where I've got the bolts from the casters coming up, right, the stud, and then we've got the flat lock and nut. That point there and this point here with my orange pointy stick, it's going to indicate the farthest outboard we could go. We do have a section here. There's only one. It's kind of a strange setup really, but I guess they based it off of engine measurements. But there's only one slot here, and yet here there's 2 pre-drilled holes, so there's 3 on one side and 2 on the other. So it is what it is. Of course, once you have the framework, if for whatever reason you need to bring it in, maybe you got something really small, or you're going to use it for like a rear end or something, not quite sure what application would be. Bottom line is that's like 1/8 inch thick angle, and you can easily drill that stuff. Stylize it however you need to. You could easily paint, you could have it powder coated in your shop's colors or whatever you prefer. Kind of the sky is the limit, and you could also replicate this for not a whole lot of De Niro. And that might be the way to go. It's a little, I'm not really used to using the oil pan rails to support a motor, so it's kind of a little funky of a concept here, but it's what the machine shop used. It's what they seem to prefer, and that would be a good place to get feedback on what you would want to, store and roll about motors all over a shop. So that's kind of why we're here. That's why I went this route. Again, you could probably find a better product. You could probably build one and make it a lot better. But for the time constraints and the price point, I don't think this is too bad. Particularly if yellow is your color, that's an added perk. But you could easily adapt this to your own casters if you're going to always do a 440, or if you stylize this, for a 350 small block, or if you're a Ford guy and you want it 429s. Once you kind of know where everything's going to line up, and you always have like your formula for oil pans, you're not going to have like a weird kick out for road racing or something. You could easily come in, grind this all down, weld it in place, and kind of use this as your footprint for your kind of custom stands, if you will. But for now, this is what I needed. It's what the doctor ordered. I think I'm going to go buy another one, and that should get me going. The great news is when these aren't in use, they break down very easy. You could just simply pull the 4, I think they're M12 bolts. Don't hold me to that. I'm not a metric guy. But the ones that take the 17 millimeter head, you could pull those. The flats would then be able to just kind of roll in, if I'm not mistaken. If not, you could easily kind of loosen everything so they could. You could store your hardware. You could weld some nuts to it. Sky's the limit, like I said. But if you don't have an engine on this, these are pretty light. Obviously, they roll. If you need to shelve them, they're pretty light to lift. You could obviously take the casters off and even have a smaller package. But it's basically a framed piece of angle iron with some square tubing and some flat stock. So exact dimensions, the length will be 21 3/4. That's obviously going to be here to here, the length being the long side of the block. The width is going to be 18 inches. So from this corner to the one that disappears under the exhaust manifold, 18 inches. And the height, completely assembled caster to the top of the flat stock, assuming everything was totally square, which it may not be, 13 3/4 of an inch. Again, for the casters themselves, you're going to need a 19 millimeter socket or wrench. For the uprights, it's going to be a 17 millimeter socket or wrench that you're going to need. Of course, they advise that every time pre-use you check this for weld, failures, cracks, stress, tension, whatever it might be. But I gotta say, for what I needed at this point in time, not too shabby. So on that note, thanks so much for watching. Hopefully this helps you out. Gives you kind of a little bit of a look, maybe a better understanding of what this engine cradle is all about. And in fact, I will bring you over here, kind of get a good feel for it this way. So that's it. I mean, it does, especially with a 440 fully kitted out, like heads and intake and everything. That's a short intake. That's a factory cast iron intake. It isn't anything crazy. Like if we had, like a big old Torque 2 or tunnel ram on top. But that's kind of how it sits, how it's structured. You can use either the holes you did not use for the straps, or they have that hole drilled in the side. I'm not sure that you can see it. If you kind of look at that broken off spark plug, i.e. the black thing on the orange leg of the cherry picker, it sort of lines up with a hole. That would again be for your straps, which are included. I'll probably go ahead and strap this thing down before I take off for the night. But that's it. That's about all I can show you. Would I buy it again? Yes, I'm about to. And, do I think if you have the skills and the material and the time, could you build this yourself? Absolutely. Could you make it better with very little extra work from this point? Yes. Would you benefit from some beefier casters? No doubt. Even if it's lightweight engines that you deal with, you can never really go too overkill with casters, in my opinion. Another upgrade, even if you like these casters, you're okay with them, they work for what you need. Foot brakes. Just get 2 with foot brakes, and that way you're kind of set for uneven floors, and it'll help in transit a little as well. If you did want to use this without the casters for transport, you would just obviously eliminate the caster and the stud coming up, and you just run a bolt through. Obviously, you'd want it to sit as flush as possible, but as long as you've got, like ribs in your bed, a bed mat, bed rug, anything along those lines, it'll eat up the difference of a shallow bolt head. So that's it. She's holding. She ain't broken. I think that's a good sign. So on that note, I will wrap it up. LoneStarMopars.com is the website. Of course, you can follow us on Facebook, Twitter, or Instagram, all three at Lone Star Mopars. With that said, we got a floating 440, we got a free cherry picker, and we got a motor to pull from a truck. So I'm going to head in, call it a night, hit the showers, and I will catch you back here for more action from the shop. Back for a very important revision, at least for big block Chrysler folk. You can see strapped in on this side. Come up, we do have the exhaust manifold, we've got the heads on. We come across, the intake is present. We drop down, there's the dipstick. But do you see a problem? I do. We have reached the end of the strap. It's right there. This end here, obviously, needs to go down to the yellow base. That's not happening. And, subsequently, yeah, that's a point of failure here. So the straps themselves, not great, but obviously completely non-functional in this situation. So this is what I tell you about when I say things that would work for GM and Ford just don't work for Chrysler. So will this strap fit a 350? I'm sure it will. Will it fit a small block Ford, a 302, a 50, whatever? I bet it would. Would it fit all of your import engines? Sure. 440 Chrysler? Nope, not happening. There is a small chance this strap would clear a small block Chrysler. I feel like we might be able to pull that off. But fully assembled 440? Nope, not happening. So, for everyone else, you're probably golden with what's included. For big block Mopar people, get your own straps. So you can stick those on with your casters when you place an order. Alright, so we're back. We're at the side of the 440 if you're unaware. And this is the one that we had brought in first. Again, about one at a time because I was afraid they'd be flimsy. I was afraid they'd be pieces of trash, whatever the case might be. You can see it's assembled, it rolls right there. It's resting up, kind of hard to tell because it's greasy, but that yellow upright disappears into the oil pan rail. You can see the same thing over here. Again, the straps they included, which would technically be something you could slide through those extra holes, are simply way too short. But I'm showing you this instead of the finished product because we don't have a finished product, because this is a piece of trash. This is I guess I should have bought two at the same time, I don't know, but this is complete garbage. You can tell, number one, this isn't square, which is a big part of the problem. It's not flat on the ground. I can only assume when they laid down these amazing welds they kind of heated it up a bit and didn't put it back into spec. But this one, I guess on the other side, there's a tag that shows it was made in October of 2019. Whoever made these in October of 2019, you suck. Your supervisor sucks. Whoever it is, the foreman at the factory sucks. Quality control is non-existent and sucks as well. This is one of those things. I don't get this credit for free. If I did, I'd tell you the same thing. I have to pay for this. And I was leery of this item for this very reason. But the one that I brought in worked. And so, in good faith, based on that experience, I picked up unit number 2. Unit number 2 is not going to work. Unit number 2 cannot be assembled as it was delivered because unit number 2 is not square. Unit number 2 is not dimensionally accurate. Unit number 2, if it was placed in a jig, the jig wasn't secure. I don't know. There's probably a myriad of quality control issues. But this is from Performance Tool. This will hopefully be the last thing I ever buy from Performance Tool. It says it has a lifetime warranty. I'm not sure if they honor warranties on things you can't break because they're not built correctly. But, once again, my floor is flat. The plywood sits flat. This does not. Okay. Coming in right here. I'm hoping, you know what, let me just grab its buddy up here for you. Okay. So we're looking at this, and it's what? 1 inch angle, 1.5 inch, whatever it might be. But you could assume that this is straight, okay? And this should be bent on 90 degrees and everything should be square. That's a term that are probably not familiar with. So when I have this resting against the side, and in fact, we'll give them every benefit of the doubt and come down into the corner, okay? Not straight in the corner because we'd be cheating them. Let's scoot it back up here and use this line from the angle iron as our guide, okay? Do you see the problem here? Okay, number one, when we have these both butted up against the wall of the angle iron, this one's considerably shorter, okay? Probably about 1/8 of an inch. Then, when we have a piece of square tubing that is 1/8 of an inch too short, I can only assume that their jig was probably done per side. Maybe it goes across the whole thing. But regardless of that, once your material is too short from the get-go, your material becomes too short when you place it in the jig. When you put material that's too short in a jig and drill it, unless they just eyeball everything, it's going to be off. And then when you compound your material being cut too short with your material being drilled incorrectly because it was too short, with a framework that's not square, guess what we have? We have occluded holes. That's right. That's a trademark of great craftsmen around the world, okay? So if we were to position this, and I was hoping you could see it better with the concrete, I guess, zoom in, can you? Not really, sadly. But like you can see that hole pretty good. Let's, well, I don't know, you can't tell because of the shadow it casts, but I'm gonna tell you right now that this is lined up decently, okay? When we come in over here, even if I start trying to adjust this, let's get the phone light here. It's after 10 p.m. This thing should have already been built, but it's a piece of garbage, so it can't be. So right there, okay? We're going to shine down. You can see the concrete, right? And just trust me, that's about as square as we can get it. So when we come over here, you can see that line right there. It gets wider because we're not square. When you get to this wall, and you look down the hole, do you see all of that yellow? That yellow is there because this material was not cut properly, nor was it drilled properly. If you're thinking, okay, we'll position it differently. So we're going to come in right there, okay? We've kind of got that pretty good. You know, if I get the right angle, you don't see much yellow at all. Come in over here, and do you see the sunshine down there? Again, this isn't translating well on camera, but there's a good 33% or so of that pre-drilled hole that is showcasing nothing more than yellow of the framework down there. So this is a complete lost cause because I paid $65 not so I could fabricate it and fix people's mistakes, but so I could use it, have it quickly assembled, put it in action, and call it a day. I don't get to do that now. This is once again, seemingly every opportunity it can, I'm slapped in the face with, if you want something done right, do it yourself. And this is another one of those scenarios. So the first $65 is okay. Not great, but functional. I'll give the thing credit. That one was easy to assemble because it was done correctly. And it apparently can withstand the weight of a 440, which is all I could ask it to do. And when you lack supervision and quality control, whether that be stateside or in the mainland of China, you get garbage. You get complete, useless garbage.